Yo, what's going on, everyone? Brian and Jim here with Drink a Beer and Play a Game, and today we begin our review of the Streets of Rage series, starting with the titular title, Streets of Rage for the Sega Genesis.
Right, don't you mean being Nukuro and Kari no Tekken?
What the fuck was that?
Get culture, asshole! Get culture! Ow! It came out in Japan as Bare Knuckle Furious Iron Fist. Released in 1991, this was developed and published by Sega. It was a Sega Genesis exclusive. This was basically Sega's answer to Final Fight, since they could not get the licensing rights from Capcom. Those went to Nintendo, so Sega, in their usual awesome fashion, said, fuck you, we're gonna do it our own way. This is one of the most loved series of all time, definitely one of the most loved beat-em-ups, and this started it all. Let's get into it.
So take a look at these graphics, just from the opening screen. You have a whole bunch of neon lights going on, the sprites look pretty damn good, and there's just a hell of a lot going on the screen. And you have levels like the beach with the waves rolling in. It's just a nice foreground animation that this game does really well.
So much atmosphere!
Yeah, this game is great with that. But on the same hand, their color palettes weren't exactly that varied. Although they use a lot of bright colors, some of the stages can be overly green or overly brown. I don't know, it's definitely not perfect, and especially comparing it to the future Streets of Rage games, you'll see what we mean. But honestly, putting that bullshit aside, this is still a goddamn well above average game, and we both gave it 7s. I'm gonna add one beer just because their lazy asses couldn't add in any parallax scrolling.
The sound. Oh my god, the music.
Jim, did you just come?
I might have, because you know what? Yuzo Koshiro just rocks my body in this goddamn one. It touches me in all these places and it just feels so right. The music tracks are excellent, and for 1991, even back then it's kind of pushing what the console can do. Sega Genesis never sounded better than with this series. Well, you could argue two soundtracks a little better, but the songs are just so moody, so jazzy, and it really gives you that moody, dingy feel that the city's going for. It's great. The sound effects aren't bad. There's some voice work in the game for, bosses, your characters, male and female, so that's good. And there's some sound effects, even though they're somewhat minimal. Some of the other sound effects you'll recognize from the Shinobi engine that this was based on. Anyway, long story short, it's all about the music. We both gave it 8s. You don't need any beers because that beautiful, beautiful soundtrack.
Like any early beat-em-up in the 90s, this has a very simplistic control scheme. You have A for your special attack, B for your regular, and C for jump.
Brian, don't forget the fact that you can hit B and C together and then he can hit behind you. Ow!
See? I just hit B and C together and smacked you with my backhand.
Damn it!
Yes, you can do that, and if you repeatedly hit B, you can do a mini combo. In addition, if you just walk close enough to some of your enemies, you will grab them and go into a grappling stance. So it's all pretty standard, nothing we haven't seen before. It's just really well done. I will say the grabbing can get annoying at times because you could accidentally grab someone when you don't mean to, like if you're going for an item or whatnot. So while it's not perfect, it is well above average, and it does not hinder the gameplay at all. Jim and I, we both gave it 8s. And as far as beer, I'm only going to add 1 just because Jim sucks.
Hey! The gameplay. I hate to say if you've played one beat 'em up, you've probably played them all, but this doesn't exactly reinvent the wheel. Luckily, what it does extremely well. Every level, you just, you go through, you try to kill all the enemies within the time limit, and there's a boss fight. And sometimes there's mini-bosses. The bosses can be brutal, especially for new players, and it'll take you some time to figure out the best strategies for taking them out. Good luck with that, but they are beatable, and you'll eventually get it.
Or you won't beat them, and then you can just drink more beer. Whichever way.
Yeah, or drink until you figure out how to kill them, or until you don't care anymore. Either way, we both gave it 7s. Might be a little low, but it's not the most varied gameplay in the world. As far as beers goes, you know what? Fuck it, I'm adding 2 beers. For those goddamn twins at the end of the ship level. Oh, they're bitches.
The originality. This was one area where Jim and I were really trying to figure out, is this game original? Because it offered really nothing new game mechanic wise to the genre. I mean, we've seen room clearing specials. We've seen different types of player styles. We've seen the thing with mini bosses within stages, picking up weapons. It's all stuff you've seen before. I guess the only two areas we could really say felt original was that for a beat 'em up this early, we didn't really see that many multiple endings. We've seen it in other games, but not in beat 'em ups. So we felt that earned it a few points, and this was an original story-ish, I will say. Listen, we are biased because we love this series, and this is the start of probably the best beat 'em up series on the Genesis. So when you see our scores, we both gave it 5s. And as far as beer, I'll just give it 1 because they could have added something a little more different in this series.
Replayability. Well, Brian already stole my thunder a little bit by talking about the multiple endings, but you have multiple endings, so it actually is more work to get the alternate endings than it is to get the best ending. Take that for what it is, but it gives you a reason to come back. Besides that, it's multiplayer, so it automatically gets 5s from us, and it's an arcade-ish game with the high scores, so they don't save, but if you want to set a personal score, go nuts.
Nobody cares about that!
Yeah, I know, it really doesn't matter. Long story short, Brian gave it a 7, I gave it a 6. And as far as beers go, I'll add 1 beer for playing with a buddy. Why not?
Overall, once again, this is one of Jim and I's favorite beat 'em up series. We still recognize it is not a perfect game.
It can be a little rough around the edges.
Yeah, and like Jim mentioned, some of the difficulty of some of the enemies is friggin' brutal. We're just not as big of fans of the type of games where it's strictly based on recognizing a pattern and kind of in some cases, like the fucking twins, you might have to use a cheap method in order to beat them because it's just annoying as hell. Putting all that aside though, this is still a friggin' great game. And if you're a fan of beat 'em up, early 90s, the Genesis, or great music, you should really pick up a copy of this, regardless of the price, unless of course you're talking in the 20s. But realistically, a game like this, you'll still be able to get it pretty cheap. Anyway, as you see, Jim and I both gave it 7s. Definitely above average, just not perfect. When we combined all of our scores for our final score, as you see, it rounds out to a 7.2, which just so happens to correlate with what me and Jim said. It's an above average game, and considering just how well done the gameplay is, you can overlook any of the minor gripes you may have. It really is a great beat 'em up for the time. When it comes to the beer pairing, we're going to choose the Neshaminy Creek Churchville Lager. This is a simple beer that is just good for drinking in quantity. Now don't get me wrong, that's not to say it doesn't have flavor, but much like this game, it's just an all-around solid experience. It's nothing that's going to blow your socks off, but if you enjoy lagers and you enjoy beat 'em ups, then pairing these two will give you one hell of a night. But remember to drink your beers and play your games responsibly. As always, guys, thanks for checking out this video, and if you enjoyed it, make sure you give us a thumbs up, leave some comments, or better yet, why not subscribe? Till next time, guys, cheers.